in any direction. I have sat on a boat in the Cape of Good Hope, and I suppose that's a beginning and an end to the story. But before we get into the details of that, let me say that I grew up as a boy, parented by parents who had absolutely no opportunity to enjoy the sea, to sail, or to enjoy anything to do with the water, and their sole preoccupation was the study of human origins and archaeology in Eastern Africa. I, for some reason, always thought that I would love to be a sailor, and there didn't seem much opportunity for many years, and we began work at Lake Turkana in 1968 to look for ancient fossils of human origins. This is the second biggest lake in East Africa after Lake Victoria. It's 150 miles in length, about 50 miles in width. It has spectacular winds and used to host a spectacular population of large crocodiles and hippo. I met my wife Maeve, who's fortunately with me this evening, and many years before, her father had introduced her to sailing in what seemed to be a rather smallish boat. I think it was 14 feet, single sail, and she had moved on to maybe 16 feet, but she loved sailing, and when I knew that, we thought that we ought to, before we had children, at least have some sailing time together. And so we bought a fireball, and I don't know if fireballs are known in these waters, particularly with stink pot lovers, but it's a 16-foot boat with a mainsail and a jib. It's exceedingly fast and is a racing class boat, a crew of 2. They get up out of the water and plane, and they are one of the fastest little boats of their kind, made of plywood. And we took this boat up to Lake Turkana, where everybody thought we were insane, and we were doing a little sailing on weekends when we weren't looking for fossils for recreation, and we had a lot of fun on this boat. And for several years we would use the summertime up there when we were in the field to go out on the water and sail, and we were going so fast that we were reasonably comfortable that nothing would catch us. And secondly, if we did fall in, which was frequent, because these things tip over terribly easily, that we would be quick enough to get out of the water before any crocodile had noticed that we were splashing around in the water. And my good wife was, the last time we sailed that boat together, she was fairly far into her first pregnancy, and the protuberance made getting back on a boat rather difficult. And we spent a lot of time. I would get on the boat and she couldn't, and then the boat capsized, and then she cursed me, and we got the boat up again and she couldn't get in. And by this stage she was getting very tired, as the ladies in this room would appreciate, with a 6 or 7 month baby, a large baby, and I was becoming both tired and frustrated, particularly as I noticed that there were heads of reptiles in the water, not too distant from where we were, who were beginning to take a keen interest in this foolishness that was going on. And we also noticed there weren't hippos too far off. So I got the sails down, got back on the boat, got righted it, and just hauled her in. She wasn't at all sure that this hadn't done some sort of permanent damage, and I'm happy to say it did no damage. But it was a matter of that. So we stopped sailing together for a while, and I couldn't find anyone to sail with me on Lake Turkana after that. Everybody decided it was foolish and stupid. I had a good friend who did periodically, but his wife also thought it was foolish and stupid. So the fireball sort of went into retirement quite early. Shallow keel, boat with reasonable mast. It was quite old, and seemed to be within a range of price that I could afford. I hadn't yet heard about having a boat inspected before you bought it, so I thought, well, I'll just buy that. So I bought it in Nairobi, sight unseen, and a few months later went down to sail it north about 300 miles up the coast to where we had a little house at Lamu. To a sailboat. Seemed to be fortuitously little wind, so the fear of capsize wasn't with me. And so we had a little outboard engine, a 15-horse engine in the stern, and we chugged out, got a little way out to sea, and pulled up the sails as we had been told what we had to do, switched off the engine. Nothing. Raining, no wind, sail flapping, boom in a small boat, as you know, is dangerously low, everybody ducking, and so I thought, well, this isn't going to work, so maybe we should proceed. We had enough fuel to go forward, so we thought, well, we'd go on for a little bit, because we thought the wind would pick up, but the current was on an incoming tide, and we were still within about a mile, maybe a mile and a half, of some rather nasty reefs, coral heads, where there were breakers breaking over the reefs. And so I pulled on the string. No spark. Nothing was going to work at all. And so after about 15 minutes of cursing and swearing, I said, well, this engine's dead too. I'm sorry, I can't do anything about this. And I remember the first thing that Dr. Johansson said to me, he said, well, have we got lifesavers? I said, lifesavers? What are lifesavers? And he said, well, sort of things you wrap around yourself that keep you afloat. I said, well, we float naturally, don't we? Why would we want to? Why would we want to? And we're in a boat. I said, I've got a case of beer, and I suggest we get it. I said, that'll help in the meantime. Anyway, we eventually got back to where we'd started. We did get the engine started. Somebody had the foresight to take out the spark plug, and of course it was all furred up with grease and oil and soot. Anyway, we got it going. So we went back, and as soon as we got back, my friend said, is there a bus from here back to Nairobi? I said, yeah, there is. If you now know where Kenya is, where you may not have done a year ago, but with the campaign and the elections and Obama, you probably have figured out where Kenya is now, whereas I'm not sure you did before. But Kenya is very close to Somalia, and where we live is very close to the Somali border. It's about 80 miles from there. And there are a lot of Somalis on that side, on our side of the border, and we're always a little bit nervous about pirates. But you know, you read a lot about pirates in the last few weeks. But there have been pirates operating there for 15 years, and it's frequently we hear of ships taken, ransoms paid, which doesn't get into your press at all, unless one of yours gets caught. But we're very familiar with pirates, and not nervous, but cautious. And so recently I was sailing the boat back down to a marina about 150 miles from where we live, and I decided it was a dark night, no moon, reasonable cloud cover, so very little light at all.